And welcome in, everybody. This is Pucks from the Pine Tree Pod, episode 3. I'm your host, Benjamin Kennedy. Thanks so much for being here with us this evening. Been gone for a couple of days, been down in Massachusetts for a little bit of a work trip. So happy to be home and coming back to you tonight. Tonight, we're going to focus in on the off season for the Boston Bruins. We're going to look at unrestricted free agents for the team. We're going to look at some of their biggest team needs. We're going to look at some potential targets, along with a quick little review of Providence and what they have down there in the minor league system, and some other things to look for here in the off season. So, before we get to that, though, want to just highlight real quick. PWHL had their Game 5 of the Walter Cup final last night down in Lowell, Massachusetts. Minnesota 3-0 winners over Boston. Um, Full value win for Minnesota. They seem to outshoot Boston kind of 2-1 in that game, but great first season for the PWHL. Great fan engagement, great crowds. Really impressed with their first season. Next year, of course, they'll have logos, they'll have more branding, more kind of team merchandise. So good on them. Looking forward to seeing what they do in season 2. A little bit of sad news this week out of the NBA. Bill Walton, 71 years old, passes away via cancer this week. Uh, NBA legend, Celtics legend, champion, wonderful TV personality, just kind of an infectious type of personality. Seemed like just such a likable person, great ambassador for the NBA. So rest in peace to Bill Walton, and certainly condolences to his family and those close to him. Um, Also, congrats to the Celtics. They did punch their ticket to the NBA Finals series that will start next week. Waiting just on the Dallas and Minnesota series to finish up. I think it'll be quite interesting. I'm not a huge NBA guy, but it'll be kind of fun to see if it is Dallas. That means Kyrie Irving coming back to Boston, so that would be a whole lot of drama and fun. So, kind of cheering for that. Um, So yeah, there you go. A little bit of news on that front. Obviously, a little bit late to the party on that. It's been a few days since I've been with you, but wanted to just highlight those couple of things. The Bruins did just announce that training camp for this season opens on the 18th of September, with the rookie camp opening on the 11th of September. So nice to have some dates to look forward to. For this year, guys, looking at what Don Sweeney and Cam Neely have to work with. Good news is they have over $20 million of cap space available. $20,909,166 to work with. All the numbers from today's video do come from capfriendly.com. Great website. Have any interest in looking up numbers or salary information? It's all right there at capfriendly.com. They're one of the more accurate websites out there. Some of the key free agents for the Bruins this year, we're not going to go over every single name, but kind of wanted to highlight a few of the bigger names and more notable names. Starting with Jake DeBrusk, 27-year-old forward, been with the team for a few years now, obviously. 80 games this year, 19 goals, 21 assists, 40 points. He was a $4 million cap hit this year. We know his history, we know his story. He's a fast player, streaky player, very inconsistent, very up and down. We all remember the trade demands he made a few years ago when Bruce Cassidy was still here. He was the team leader this year, though, in the postseason, 11 points and 5 goals. And I feel like was one of the more consistent skaters in the playoffs. I think he was one that kind of brought energy every game, and you could definitely notice him in each game. I will give him credit. Over the past 3 years, and it did start under Bruce Cassidy, seemed like his 200-foot game got a lot better. When he was a young guy, if he didn't have the puck on his stick, he was kind of useless. He was really up and down player, but he really started to figure out the game when he didn't have the puck. How do I forecheck? How do I help my team out when I'm not, having the puck on my stick? I do think that improved. I do think it actually, oddly enough, started in that last year when Bruce was here and has just improved over the last couple of years. So I do think there's some value with Jake. Again, he's only 27 years old. He is fast. Um, kind of reading between the lines, and when you look at that kind of end of season presser, when all the management was up there in front of the media, Sweeney was, you know, kind of direct without being direct, right? He basically said, "Hey, we took an aggressive approach with Jake. We have a number. He has a number, and there's no contract." Um, I will be shocked if he's back in Boston next year. I just will. I think. I mean, he'd be good to come back. I'd be happy to have him back. But I do think there'll be some other teams looking at him. And again, when you read between the lines of what Don had to say, I think he's as good as gone. I really think best fits for him. I think Edmonton is one that really comes to mind. He's from Edmonton. His dad works for the team. I think that when you look at what they have there with those top end players, he'd be a great middle tier, middle line forward for them. And as much as we keep thinking that DeBrus is a 30-goal guy, the frustrating thing for Bruins fans is if he goes to a team like Edmonton, probably will be a 30-goal guy next year because the guys he'll be playing around. But I think Edmonton, Pittsburgh has been talked about a little bit. Um, I think he'd be a good fit for the Kings. I think he'd be a good fit in Vancouver. Toronto, there's been some Toronto rumors around there that maybe Toronto would look at him. I don't necessarily see that, but that's stuff that's being talked about a little bit amongst the rumor mill. Matt Grzelcyk, defenseman, 30 years old, 63 games this year, 2 goals, 9 assists, 11 points. He was a 3.687.5 million dollar cap hit for the team this year. Towards the end of the year into the playoffs, he did seem to kind of fall out of favor in the D rotation. Forber got healthy, Lori was playing more, and only played 3 games in the playoffs. There was some speculation that maybe he was dealing with an injury. Maybe I don't really buy that. I just think that the fit just wasn't there under Coach Montgomery and what you saw in both that Toronto and Florida series. And being a UFA, he has value. He's a good puck mover. He can play a little PP for you. He'll get a contract. I just don't think he'll be here in Boston. Derek Forbert, 32 years old, 35 games this year, no goals, 4 assists, 4 points. He was a $3 million cap hit this year. Injury concerns with Derek started to catch up to him a little bit. When he's healthy, he's a good stay-at-home defensive defenseman. Always been a good PK guy. Never as maybe physical as he seems like he could be, but always been just pretty stout and solid. But given the injury history, given his age, you know, I don't know what the Bruins do there. I don't see him coming back. I think with everything else Boston has going on, and other players they might be looking at free agency, I think that Derek is probably gone. If he does come back, he'll be on I think a reduced salary, reduced years, but um, I do think he gets work. I think there'll be teams out there looking for him, but I don't think he'll be here. Kevin Shattenkirk, 35 years old, played 61 games this year, 6 goals, 18 assists, 24 points. He was a $1.05 million cap hit this year. I thought he fit in really well. Kind of underrated veteran guy. Played good on the PP for us. Fit in well. Obviously, 61 games, so he certainly was in and out of the lineup a little bit. Don't know what the Bruins are going to do with him this year. If he comes back, I think he'll be more of a rotational guy. At 35, but does he still want to play? I think he still has game left, but be curious to see if the Bees try to bring him back or if he ends up, signing another 1-year deal elsewhere. Uh, Milan Lucic, I have to mention him. I'm sorry. 36 years old, played the 4 games this year for the Bruins, only 2 assists, 2 points, $1 million cap hit. Yeah, most likely done in the NHL. My only comment here, guys, will be that I just hope his family's okay. I hope that he's okay, and I just hope for healing from whatever took place, whatever they're dealing with as a family. I just hope they're well, and I wish them well. I think his NHL career most likely done at this point. From there, we've got Pat Maroon, obviously traded for him at the deadline. 36 years old, 51 games between Minnesota and Boston. 4 goals, 12 assists, 16 points. $1 million cap hit. In that same presser, Sweeney did kind of leave the door open for Pat to resign here. Maroon really seemed to love the culture, love the locker room in Boston. Sweeney did mention health as a kind of a sticking point if he's going to come back. So it does tell you that he came back from the surgery, but I don't think we got the full version of Pat Maroon now. Again, at 36, what does he have left? We'll see. You're going to need some sort of grit and heavy player on this team, and Pat could certainly fill that role for you. I think short term, short money, I'd be okay with. JVR, James Van Riemsdyk, 35 years old, 71 games, 11 goals, 27 assists, 38 points, $1 million cap hit this year. He had a decent start with the team. You saw that net front presence. I was really kind of impressed with his passing as well. I never knew how good of a passer he was. You saw that kind of first half of the year. Uh, we know towards the end he had the illness, lost some weight, missed a bunch of time, kind of came back for the playoffs, but never really seemed to get his full juices back. Um, I don't think he comes back this year. I think that maybe retirement for him. Maybe this is it. I could also see a Philly return for the Flyers. I mean, given where they're going, they could use maybe another veteran presence, and he played for a number of years down there. Wouldn't be shocked if he's wearing a Flyers uniform next year. Dan Hyman, talked a little bit about him in the last video, but 28 years old, 74 games this year, 17 goals, 19 assists, 36 points. League minimum contract, 775,000 this year. I loved this game. Be honest, I loved it. He was a bit of a Swiss Army knife for this team. Really comfortable playing up and down the lineup. 200-foot game, really responsible. And like I said in the last video, he seemed to elevate his game or elevate whatever line he played on a little bit last year. I liked it. I do think at 28 years old, I think he earned himself a raise this year. I'd be very comfortable with the Bruins at $2 million a year over 2 or 3 years for him. So we'll see what happens there. Last name I'm going to mention in terms of UFAs, lesser known name, but Oscar Steen, 26 years old, played 34 games for the Bruins, 1 goal, no assist, 1 point. He was an $800,000 cap hit. Played a lot in Providence. I thought early in the year when he was up, he had some moments of energy. He had some moments of fire. Playing on that fourth line. Didn't seem to be sustainable. Didn't seem to be all that consistent after kind of that first part of the season. I think if the Bruins do sign him, he'll be more of a two-way type player. Probably play a lot more in Providence, but we'll see what happens there. Those are your most notable UFAs going into the offseason. Probably the biggest story of this offseason is going to be the goaltending. No question about it, guys. Linus Ullmark, 30 years old. He has 1 year left on his contract, $5 million cap hit for 2024-2025. In 40 games this year, he was 22, 10, and 7 with 2.58 goals against and a .915 save percentage. He does have a modified no trade clause. I think it's 15 or 16 teams. So while everybody's saying, "Oh, he's definitely going to get traded, definitely going to get traded," it's not a given that he's going to get traded. He's got about half the league that he's just not willing to go to. When you listen to some of his, comments in locker cleanout day, he seemed very, very, very adamant that he wants to stay. Now that can change. You do have to remember he is on an expiring contract, and at 30 years old, he probably has one more good contract in him. So if you know you're going to come back to Boston, and you're going to be at best a platoon with Johnny Swayman, do you really want that to be your contract year? I don't know. I would rather go to a team and play 55 or 60 games and earn my one last big payout. So, we'll see what happens. I think some potential fits. I mean, LA was talked about last year. All the rumors where there was a deal in place with the Kings that he nixed. Not sure that's true. There was a lot of fire around that. I think Colorado could be a great fit. They clearly could use an upgrade in goal. And a little bit of talk about Ottawa. I just don't know if the Bruins really want to trade him in division. I apologize. I just see Florida just scored. Yeah, who was it? Florida 3-1. We're watching Game 5, Florida New York right now. Under 2 minutes to go. Looks like Sam Bennett. I'll make Bruins fans happy. Hey, Sam Bennett scored. Woohoo! 3-1 Florida right now, guys. So looks like they're gonna take a 3-2 series lead in that series. Yeah, empty netter. Yep. Mr. Bearded Bennett. All right, there you go, guys. So the Allmark piece will be really interesting to see what happens with him. I like Allmark, but I do know that all the needs on this team, you got to utilize that $5 million in a little bit better space. You don't want to have, assuming that Swayman gets paid 6.5, 7.5 million, you don't want 11, 12, $13 million tied up in the gold. You can't sustain that in this league today. Talked about Swayman a lot in the last video, but we'll talk about him again here. 25 years old. He is an RFA this year. So again, he will get signed. He did go to arbitration last year. It was not a pleasant situation for anybody, but they got through it. In 44 games this year, he was 25, 10, and 8, 2.53 goals against, 916 save percentage. He is the present. He is the future. He is our number one goaltender. Again, they're going to lock him up. I feel like a 7-year deal. I'd say between $6.5 and $7.5 million will get the job done. And again, Sweeney mentioned this is priority one for the team this year, so I'll be looking for that. And down in Providence, we do have Brandon Bussey, 25 years old. He is an RFA this year, but he was 41 games down in Providence, 23, 10, 5, and 1. Shootout loss, I believe that last one is. 2.67 goals against and a 913 save percentage. So really good year down in Providence for him. Could definitely be a candidate to be a backup for Sway, if Allmark moves on. I could also see the team going out and signing a veteran backup, for Sway and keeping Bussey down in Providence to have, a strong, kind of 3-tiered goaltending unit. But we will see. I think Bussey did play a couple of games in the preseason. I know it's just preseason last year, but looked really good as well. So goaltending not a problem for this group. Certainly won't be. So as we move on from that, guys, look at the NHL draft. We know that over the last number of years, the Bruins have kind of gone all in, during the Bergeron, kind of Tuukka Rask, Chara years, and a lot of first-round picks traded. So when you look at this year's draft, they're sitting on a 2024 fourth, fifth, and sixth round pick. So no first, second, or third this year. 2025, they have a first, third, fifth, sixth, and seventh. And then 2026, they have a first, second, third, fourth, fifth, and seventh. So, the bad news is the draft is kind of a bust this year. You've got some later picks, but in years going forward, you have more of a full assortment. Hopefully, they stop trading first round picks. I think you're at a point where you have to start hanging on to those picks and fill in your system up a little bit with kind of the next youth movement. We'll talk about some of the youth, though, that they do have on the team right now. Some guys that came up and played this year, again, were highlighted in the last video. Johnny Beecher, we know, 23-year-old centerman. He was a 925 cap hit this year. I think he's well positioned to be a good player for this team. Fourth line, he can play a little center, a little wing for you. Justin Brazeau, a little bit older, 26 years old. He was a minimum wage guy last year, $775. Big kid, what is he, 6'5", 6'6", and really kind of emerged halfway through the year last year. And like a guy that is just interesting to see where he'll fit. Mason Lohrei, 23-year-old defenseman. He was a 925 cap hit last year. We know this kid is going to have a major role in this team in the top four defense as we go on. Um, Sky's the limit, ceiling's the limit for this kid. And then lastly, we have Matty Patra, 20-year-old centerman. We know the shoulder injury from a year ago, had the surgery. It was an $870,000 cap hit over this past season. Tons of potential, tons of skill, creative with puck on his stick. I really hope that he can develop. I think that you may have something really special with him as well. But when we look deeper into Providence, we've got a few other names just to keep in mind for next year. Some of these guys might be a long shot, and we might actually see some of these guys up with the Bruins next year. A name that most Bruins fans will be familiar with is Fabian Lysell. Seems like the guy's been around for a long time. He's 21 years old, though, only 21. He's a winger. Played 56 games in Providence last year, 15 goals, 35 assists, 50 points total. There's been some questions as to whether he really fits in Jim Montgomery's kind of style of play. There's been some maturity issues, which he's 21. That's going to happen. But they've held on to him. I think a couple of years ago there was a lot more buzz around him. They've held on to him. Let's hope he can make something because he's in a definite spot that the Bruins need to fill in terms of depth scoring and winger scoring on this team. Merkelov, 23-year-old winger. He did play a little bit up here in Boston this year in 67 games in Providence. So he was 30 goals, 35 assists, 65 points. So he may have a shot at making the team. I think you'll see him in camp. I think he'll have every shot to try to make this club. Um, I thought he played fine when he came up. Nothing super memorable, but I thought he played okay. Couple of names to keep in mind. Again, these might be even more long shots for the team, but just names to be mindful of as we go into camp in September. John Farinacci, 23 years old. He's centerman. Last year in Providence, 71 games. He played 12 goals, 26 assists, 38 points. Um, Curious, given his age, been around for a little bit. Um, we'll see. A little bit younger, I think you pronounce this Frederick Brunet, and apologize if I'm mispronouncing that. 20-year-old defenseman, played 48 games last year in Providence for the team. He's 6'2", 196. He's got a little bit of size. Again, a little bit probably of a long shot to make this group, but just one of those young defensemen that just to keep your eye on. Sweeney likes having those young defensemen down there. Last thing we're going to mention here, guys, player we picked up from the University of Minnesota, undrafted free agent, Jackson Nelson. 24 years old, centerman, had the unique experience of playing 5 years of college. He was had the COVID exception year roped in there. Last year in Minnesota, had 39 games played, 19 goals, 12 assists for 31 points. Did play 7 games after he signed in Providence with 1 goal, but he's 6'4", 207 pounds, so has a little bit of size. And he's not your typical rookie. He's played, the 5 years of college. He's 24 already. This is a name that could, potentially play next year. So it'll be really curious to see what Nelson has as he gets a full camp. Most likely he starts in Providence, right? But it'll be curious. So that's just a little bit of a look at what you have in terms of youth, what you have in terms of what's going on in Providence. There's probably a few other names I could have thrown in there, but those are kind of the names that stuck out to me. Anybody who watched this team this year or follows the Bruins knows the most glaring needs on this team. We're going to go over the most glaring of needs, though, and these are not going to be a surprise. Frontline center. Priority one and job one. I mean, after signing Swayman, finding either first or second line center is going to be huge. You do need to find from there a top six winger, someone to support Pasta, in the scoring. If you lose DeBrusque, you probably need to find two top six or middle six wings to add to this group. I think after that, a physical left-handed shot defenseman would be really important. And then a couple things that Cam Neely mentioned in that presser was speed and ability to win 50-50 puck battles. And I was happy to hear him say that because I think that anybody watching this group would say, yeah, not the fastest team, and at times they did struggle in those some of those puck battles. So we'll be curious to see, what they can do there. But I would say those are the biggest needs I can see. Certainly curious your thoughts. Please leave those in the comment section if you have any other thoughts about what the Bruins should be looking for as we go into next season. If we're just talking about goals, in terms of goal scores that are going to be available on the open market, there's a handful of really good names this year. There's going to be a lot of um, competition for these names, but we're going to call out the top five goal scores that are available when July 1st hits. Sam Reinhart from Florida, 28 years old, 57 goals this year. He was a $6.5 million cap hit. Guy's going to get paid. He is going to get paid. Always concerning when you got a guy at 28 having a career year. Do you want to give him that 8-year contract, knowing that the back half of that contract, it's not going to look good, not going to age well. But Reinhardt's a solid player, good goal scorer. I'd welcome him on my team any day of the week. Jonathan Marchessault from Vegas, excuse me, 33 years old, 42 goals this year. It's $5 million cap hit. Vegas is interesting. They have no cap space going into the season, going into the offseason. They're just under $900,000 of cap space. They've got $5 million tied up into LTIR with Robert Liner, their old goaltender, and they made all the trades that they did. At the trade deadline last year, so they're at a tough spot. Marchessault, going to be hard for them to hang on to him. Here's a name everybody up here in Boston will know: Steven Stamkos from Tampa, 34 years old, 40 goals. He was an $8.5 million cap hit this year. Tampa's another interesting team this year. Only $5 million, a little over $5 million of cap space. So they've got some maneuvering to do if they feel like Stammer is going to be part of their group next year. I think we would all love to see him in a Bruins uniform. I don't think we see it happen, but if he doesn't re-sign in Tampa, if they don't figure it out, he's going to be very well sought after. Just his veteran presence, his leadership, responsible player, still a good goal scorer. And again, you think he's been around a long time. He's still only 34. He's still got a few years left. Tyler Toffoli is going to be out there. He's 32 years old, 33 goals this year between New Jersey and Winnipeg. He was a $4.25 million cap hit this year. So he'll be an interesting one. Wonder if Winnipeg tries to re-sign him. And probably the guy that I really want to see them go after, Jake Gensel, 29 years old, 30 goals this year between Pittsburgh and Carolina. He was a $6 million cap hit this year. Now, Carolina is another interesting team. They've got $27.3 million worth of cap space. But they're also, they just lost on Waddell, their GM, signed just with Columbus a couple days ago. So they have an interim GM in there. A lot of talk is that they want to keep him. They want to keep Gensel. That's a big goal for them. Thing with Carolina is they've had great defense for a lot of years, well coached, well structured team. Goal scoring's always been a little bit touch and go. I mean, Sebastian Aho was great. Gensel, I thought, was a wonderful trade for them, and I think that wouldn't be shocked if they try to keep him, and if they do keep him, given that cap space. But he's certainly a player that, man, if we could ever wear the spoke B, that'd be a good times for us here in Boston. Some of the names that I feel like maybe a little bit of a wish list, or names that I hope or think the Bruins may target. I mean, again, the names I just listed out there, really just the top 5 goal scorers. So all those names would be lovely names to add here. Whether they can be in on any of those guys, we'll see. There's going to be a lot of competition for those names. There's no question though that at the top of the list for Boston in terms of their targets is going to be Elias Lindholm from Vancouver. Centerman, a player that when he was in Calgary, Boston really tried to target him. Uh, a lot of rumors that they were right there and on him at the deadline, but he's 29 years old. He played 75 games between Calgary and Vancouver this year, 15 goals, 29 assists, 44 points. A little bit of a down year scoring wise, but he's a very good defenseman. I think most notably in the face-off circle, he was 56.4%. Something the Bruins really need to improve on. Uh, I think he'd be a wonderful fit here. Um, we'll see what happens. The Vancouver fit, it seemed like it took a little while. I think as the playoffs went on, he got more acclimated and was a better fit there. Vancouver said all the right things. They want to keep him, but with all the other players they have with Pedersen and JT Miller and other players, I don't know if Vancouver will be a fit for Lindholm. But you also know the Bruins are going to be all over that. Hopefully they can sign him. We'll see. The aforementioned Jake Gensel is somebody I really hope they target. Again, I don't know where that goes. I think that Carolina is going to be right there. But he's a name I just think he would be such a great fit to go along with Pasta, Martian, and all the other guys you have here already. Uh, another name that was talked about in the trade market last year, Adam Henrique, was in Anaheim, got traded to Edmonton, obviously still playing here in the Western Conference Finals. He's 34 years old, played 82 games, 24 goals, 27 assists, 51 points. He's not going to be a frontline guy for it, but be a great middle tier, second, third line, probably second line wing for you. Can play a little bit of center as well. I think it would just be a good veteran forward to add to this group. I don't think he would cost you a ton to bring in. If you don't get Lindholm, there's a couple of other centers you could look to target. Sean Monahan, start of the season in Montreal, traded to Winnipeg, 29 years old. He has the distinction of playing 83 games this year because of the trade. Only an 82 game season, but he plays 83 games just the way the schedule hit between Montreal and Winnipeg. 26 goals, 33 assists, 59 points for him for his season. Thought was a good get for Winnipeg, and he will be a UFA. So I think he could be a really nice target here in Boston. Maybe more likely target for the Bruins might be Chandler Stevenson, another Vegas UFA. 30 years old, 75 games played this year, 16 goals, 35 assists for 51 points. He was a 52.8 in the faceoff circle this year. Think he'd be a good fit. Not a first line center, perhaps, but if you had him in there with Coyle and Zaka and Patra and Beecher and Morgan Geeky, you've improved that room if you bring in someone like him. We will see. Last forward, I'll mention another name that was kind of bantered around at the deadline. Alex Wenberg ends up with the Rangers, but started the season in Seattle. He's 29 years old, played 79 games this year, 10 goals, 20 assists for 30 points. Playing, of course, in the Eastern Conference Finals right now with the Rangers. But be curious. Again, not a frontline guy, but he's one of those kind of consolation prizes. If you can't get Lindholm or you can't get a Stevenson, I think a Wenberg could be somebody that you could look at again. And from a defensive perspective, you've got uh, McAvoy, you got Lindholm, you got Carlo, you got Lori, you got Peak. I think Watherspoon, player that kind of emerged this year for the team as well. But they're going to be looking to add, I think, a left shot defenseman. Uh, the team definitely needs some more grit, needs a little more sandpaper out there. And there's a couple names that come to mind. Starting with Brendan Dillon, left shot defenseman. He's 33 years old, out of Winnipeg. Played 77 games this year, 8 goals, 12 assists for 20 points. He's 6'4", 225 pounds. Good all around defenseman. I'd love to see him in the spoke B. I think he'd be a really great Bruin. I think he'd really flesh that defensive unit out. I don't think he'll cost you a ton either. There'll be some competition for him. A little bit lesser though, but another option. I think Nikita Zadorov, another Vancouver player, another player that was traded from Calgary to Vancouver. Uh, Another left shot defenseman, 29 years old, so a little younger than Dylan. Played 75 games between the two teams, 6 goals, 14 assists, and 20 points. He's 6'6", 248. So a little bit bigger guy, probably a little bit heavier player than Dylan. Overall, I think they would both be really good parts of a defensive unit if you were to bring out one of those two guys. I'm not going to spend a ton of time, talking about trade targets because there's so many different rumors out there. I mean, you go on to Facebook or X or any of those sites right now. I mean, the rumors are just swirling about what the Bruins could be looking for in the trade market or in the RFA market. There's a lot of different names out there. We're hearing about Brock Nelson out of the New York Islanders, $6 million cap hit this year as a potential target. Marty Natchez out of Carolina. He's an RFA, so he would need a contract and maybe a trade. Out of Carolina. That's a name that's getting a lot of juice. For whatever reason, we keep hearing about Jacob Chikrin out of Ottawa. It's like Jacob Chikrin just won't go away. Like for years when he was in Arizona, like Boston was rumored to be in on him. They looked at him. They talked to Arizona about different trades. He finally gets traded to Ottawa. I don't know. I don't think he's a great fit here. I just don't know what he adds to the group. He's a $4.6 million cap hit. There's some people say, "Oh, trade Allmark to Ottawa and go get Chikrin." No, no, thank you, no, thank you. I'm out. I'm out on that one. And then the real dreamers right now, and the real wish list guy that's being talked about is Leon Draisaitl. Oh my goodness, guys! Yeah, I'd love to see that. What Bruins fan wouldn't want to see Leon Draisaitl wear a Bruins uniform? But let's just take a breath, okay, guys. He's under contract for next year, $8.5 million cap hit. We can all draw the dots. Edmonton could probably use an upgrade goal. Right? Skinner's fine. He's been good. He's had his moments in the playoffs where he's looked good. We know that Allmark could be a real good fit there. Is Edmonton really going to trade Draisaitl for Allmark and some other assets? I don't know. He is on an expiring contract, so it is curious, right? I mean, I guess you can convince yourself that that could happen. Um, I think if he is unsigned and stays in Edmonton next year, a year from now, the Draisaitl talk is going to be the talk of the league for sure. I mean, there's no question. Does he want to stay in Edmonton? Do they have the money to keep both him and McDavid and the rest of that group together? It's going to be a wild conversation. I don't think anything happens this year. And I certainly don't think that Edmonton is looking to trade Draisaitl to Boston. If you do, you are trading not just Allmark. You're probably trading a first round pick or maybe a couple first round picks to get it. Just don't think it happens. I, you know, I guess stranger things have happened, and I really hope I'm wrong, man, because I'm here for all that. If Draisaitl ends up on this team, and all you got to do is trade Allmark and a couple first rounders, I'm here for that for sure. But I'm not banking. Sweeney's track record, he does tend to be fairly aggressive. I think that's the exciting thing about this offseason is you've got the money, you've got almost 21 million in cap space. You've got the ability to potentially trade Allmark that could open up that extra $5 million. So there's a lot of different things on the table. We've only highlighted just a handful of UFAs. We've highlighted just a handful of potential trade targets. But there's a lot of different things out there that could happen. And as much as we can pick on Sweeney for some of the misses he's had, he does stay aggressive. The team does usually spend right to the cap. So I am really curious and really excited to see what they're going to do. Um, I'm really curious your thoughts. So, who do you want the Bruins to target this year? From their own UFA list or from the UFAs that are out there in the league, who are you looking for? Who would you love to see wear the Bruins uniform next year? Feel free to leave those comments in the comment section below. I would love to hear from you guys. Again, thank you guys so much for your support. Please don't forget to hit the like button, hit the subscribe button if you like what you're hearing. Um, Thank you guys so much. I will be back with you shortly with some more content, some more videos, and I just hope you all have a wonderful evening. We'll talk to you again soon.